Science.
Science. I'm not going to say good morning. Oh my goodness.
No worries. You're not, you haven't missed anything.
State's fault.
Evaluation, but Don went to print the motion. Did you have one? Don went to print it. Oh, wait, really? Said that already.
Right. We'll get started in a minute. We're just waiting on the motions to arrive. Okay. They'll be here any second. Good day, go. Thank you.
We gotta figure something.
Let's see if we can in the room. Okay. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the February 12th, 2018 regular meeting of the Board of Education. First item is we need to approve our agenda.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. And our first item of business this evening is executive session on a personnel-related matter for superintendent evaluation. And I've got the motion here. I'll move the Board of Education recess to executive session to discuss personnel matters of non-elected personnel in order to protect the privacy interest of the individuals to be discussed, with Anna Stubblefield, interim superintendent, invited to be present, and with the board to return to open session in this room at 45 minutes. 6:45 with possible action to follow.
Second.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and then you want to do the motion for the next one? Will I have to come back out? Yes. Make the motion and go back in. Okay.
did they give us our
Oh,
wallets?
I guess we could technically sit down. So,
We've returned from our first executive session. We have no action to take at this time. So our next item is we have a second executive session on an attorney-client, attorney consultation regarding the Peasley, an agreement with Peasley Tech.
I move the Board of Education recess to executive session to discuss privileged matters with the board's attorney in order to protect the board's interests regarding legal matters by preserving the attorney-client privilege with Anna Stubblefield, interim superintendent, David Cunningham, executive director of human resources and chief legal counsel, and Kathy Johnson, executive director of finance, invited to be present, and with the board to return to open session at 7:10 with possible action to follow.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
about 40% of provides for exercise. BTUs.
Good, how are you? Saw you the other day, but you just ignored me. Oh, man, where were you at? Same place you were having lunch?
Yeah, I've been so many places.
Same old Jack.
Oh, okay.
Friday.
I didn't see. Okay, were you with the county guys? Okay. Yeah, I saw the guys in the jacket. I probably looked right at you too, didn't I?
Maybe,
Okay.
I saw a big group come in and they were kind of getting set down. I think you came in last. And you were standing there kind of looking around.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kept doing that. I don't know if you actually looked over this way, but you could.
Yeah. Well, you should have yelled at me.
Nah, no, you were a big group, so I just.
Decided not to.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So I was with Bob and Washington guys came to town, so they were showing him around. So we went to lunch. Hey, Elvin, how you doing? I'm fine. Yeah.
So, they have the same 8-year warranty? Yeah, same like 9 years, 5 to 10.
We're gonna push for more than that.
Have they improved that much, or is it just, and you know how better to take care of it? Or?
Yeah, technology's gotten better.
I know. I left Britain and got
Is that within the installation?
That's correct.
Like, that means, that's good.
But yeah, oh my gosh.
Still more expensive than grass. Is that
Well, it
correct?
depends on how you look at it. So that's a very gray area. So if you have to look at it. If you're looking at it.
I can go to 10. You know me.
It depends on if you want to look at it from a yearly maintenance standpoint or. Now, on a yearly basis, if you take the capital investment over this period of life, probably going to be the synthetic.
Oh, no, it's so good. You can't see the dead bodies because, you know, for some reason,
If I had synthetic grass,
let's see.
we would have very limited use. Plus, we would need. For every sport, so you're looking at double the amount of fields. Plus, less of the community.
Your son's in this one. He's got districts.
Teams play on the baseball and softball field, and community teams during the summer? Or
Yeah, there's several games, high school students, high school.
Like setting him up for use for the first year.
And the softball thing.
Softball. Yeah, they do both.
Gracefully read.
Anything more? Any better?
Yeah, we're excited for the replacement of that. So.
Yeah.
But no, that'll do it. Just like I said, if you have more questions, ask me. Yeah, and I missed the last 2 weeks.
From the executive session.
Monday last week.
No, it's Monday next week. The third Monday.
So I didn't miss it.
No, you missed this month.
Okay.
You missed January.
I missed January. Okay. Okay.
You haven't missed this one. Had it last month, we had it on a Tuesday just because of how everything fell out. Like it was Martin Luther King Day.
Right.
And so, but it's 5:30 to 7. Next month, we're not having it because it's spring break.
Spring break. Okay.
But we were talking about having a meeting with adults. haven't heard.
That'd be pretty cool, definitely. So, yeah. But no, I just, usually my wife and my boys, I have 3 boys, you know. And I'll come with them.
Yeah,
So we basketball. Practices on Mondays.
yes, that's the third Monday. As far as I know, they haven't changed.
Right. So somehow I don't have to. Yeah, we've been talking about the meetings a lot, see how we can get them involved in this.
When you talk, I gotta know when to stand up and fly.
He's gonna throw eggs at me probably, so I don't get to talk tonight, man. So, no, I said you have to go underhand. I saw you and Gwen in attendance. Yeah, okay. West, okay, gotcha.
So Southwest, somewhere, the last one.
Good job. Fun deal. Micah did that last year. They didn't, I don't know, they didn't qualify for anything. He enjoyed it. I think you're right. They were kind of unorganized.
So it's really going there. Grew.
Good.
So this group, they won third last Saturday. Program called outside for a better.
Yeah. They're doing well, man.
Hey, you're there too?
Oh, good. Absolutely.
7 days?
Leave Saturday morning, come back Wednesday. Some of the kids are gonna stay.
Or offense, band, vocalist.
She played the banjo.
Banjo player, from Kansas City. That's the end, she's gonna be a part of it. But, well, we know that, and that's her history. But, anyway, our
Yep. Right there on the mall. Walking shoes, man.
program that they're doing for fundraising as Kelly Hunt, some banjo player from Kansas.
She's in middle school age. Yeah. Good year so far. Yeah, that's right. Kind of the same way, man. It's as good as you want to make it, right? Yeah, that's right. Yep. As far as I know, all right. Good. It's good to hear.
Lettering, at the meeting were
No, I don't think so.
But you have to come.
Yeah, we have an item on
wonderful person that communicates all over.
for replacement.
What's her name?
Consent agenda. It's all kind of stick around.
Electronic.
Okay. Which the boys basketball is going to practice. Hopefully I can get this approved, make sure everything goes smoothly. I'll snap out basketball practice.
Where's the old truck going?
Now, good part of this is being supported by Crown.
Probably I'll sit and say, hey,
This is.
everybody who knows I'm taking it out.
Large part is a
they're not actually going to share progress. They're basically separate.
Trust me, running on this, I'm gonna scan it.
Which means we either have to buy something. We got some home kids. Yeah, that stuff is heavy. Building where I get it.
What's her name?
Well, but it relates to kids. I mean,
Yes.
and
No, I mean, just tell them it was what's her name.
I said I'm pretty sure that's got it there. Oh yeah.
Forklift and
More than a cop.
Yeah, it'd still be hard to do. Buy like a 40 piece of PVC pipe, make sure they blow it up in there. That helps a lot too. Because sometimes they won't.
I love you so much. I wasn't allowed to. The electricity.
You know what? I would mind.
Every single one of them.
Yeah, that's right. You take what you can get, right?
something controversial.
Oh, not that, no. It's a special recognition.
Well, I mean, and the policeman out there.
Yeah, I saw that, and I don't know what that was about. Because we really don't have anything. I'm not quite sure.
get him, and then you get him on top of the boat. Oh, it's a fun one. It's in Lawrence.
And not where it's not out of work.
Is it I? Yeah,
We're always having fun. I always want to go to this field.
Yeah, Marsville, I'm not gonna have a summer camp this year. One of my places.
Yeah.
I totally understand.
I'm gonna have to keep this coat nearby if I can.
All right.
Keep it close to here.
Like a cardigan or something, but not today. GR. Did you have pull anything from consent? Okay. All right. Jessica on her way in.
I think she went into the restroom.
Okay.
Okay, we've returned from our executive session. I'm going to call nope, I don't need to call a break. Okay. And we do not have any action to take as a result of our executive session, so we'll be moving on with the rest of our agenda. Next item up is our special recognition this evening. We have our West Middle School Future City Regional Champions with Charlotte Kiefer, our gifted education facilitator, and Wilson Kilmer, our social studies teacher, and Brad Kemp, principal of West Middle School.
Evening. So take an opportunity tonight to celebrate West Middle School students. I will let you know that last year these individuals had a goal of winning regionals. So for them to go out and do that and go to Washington, D.C. here this week to the national tournament is a great accomplishment. So with them is Ms. Kiefer and Mr. Wilson, who spent a lot of time over winter break. They might have been on a snow day. I don't know that for sure. We'll just pretend it didn't happen to get their things together. So I'll let them introduce their team.
And actually, I'm going to let them introduce themselves. This is our team from last year who won third at regionals, and they said that they were going to come back and win this year. And they knew what they were doing. If you don't know anything about Future City, it is an engineering competition, but it teaches the kids so much more than just engineering. They have to work as a team. They have to listen, as I tell them, with both ears to every person in their group, because everyone's opinion is valuable, and then they have to use reasoning skills. What should we choose? So this year they came back and they did an incredible job on their model, which we shipped to DC today. And their presentation and their answering question skills were beyond belief. So I will let them introduce themselves and tell just a little bit about their city.
And if you could go up to the microphone, since we're broadcasting the meeting, that'd be great. Thank you.
All right, everybody go.
All right, so our city is called Misonadi, and it is in southern Ukraine. And one feature we have is that we have many smart sensors in our apartments. So one feature we have are smart floors, which can track your stride. And also for the elderly, they can track if you fall, and they can tell your local doctor, and they can also send people to come and help you. We also have smart toilets, which take samples and can tell you how well your digestive system is doing or if you're dehydrated or something. We also have smart mirrors, which can scan your face, and if there's an irregularity, they can tell your local doctor that you might be at risk for a stroke. And we also have smart fridges, which can tell you if your food is expired. They can also tell you how well your diet is and how healthy and how balanced it is. And I am Maggie Lee.
And the technology that they used is actually all being developed right now. We found it through research.
Okay. I'm Margaret Botry, and another feature that we have in our city is our two of our transportation systems, which are we have gondola systems in our city that run on solar power, and they are like gondolas in the sky, and they connect your buildings, and they allow you to transport yourself. And then we also have kinetic sidewalks underground, which are we're moving sidewalks that are powered by kinetic energy by the people walking on them, and they help the elderly like get around without having to like walk everywhere, but they also can allow people who like want to like get in some exercise to walk around as well. Okay.
I'm Hannah Hayden. Towards the middle of our city, we have a big race track called a hippodrome, and our hippodrome in our city was decayed and run down, so we decided to make that into an outdoor shopping plaza and trading post where many people of different ages are allowed to walk around and meet new people and get outside and enjoy themselves.
I'm April Haight, and one of the features of our city was a desalination tube, and that's something that takes ocean water and removes the salt from it so it can be drunk as if it were fresh water. So it purifies the water using a filter that filters out the salt ions from the water. And we use hydraulic pumps to pump that water into our water tower, which is on our model, and it has real water in it. And I love that feature of our city. It's so much fun.
I'm Xavier Bowen, and another feature of our city are exosuits. So they are being prototyped right now, and they are wearable clothing that has sensors located all around it. And so it detects what's happening on your skins and bones and can adjust to optimize your recovery. So if you broke your arm, you would wear an exosuit just on your arm, and it would detect what's happening on your bones and could adjust the healing process to optimize your recovery time.
Does anyone have any questions for them?
So I don't know that any of you were there, but I got to speak to Future City. I'm a geriatric social worker, so I talked to you at the beginning of this process. There were a bunch of you at the middle school. And so I am very excited that you are here today. And this is really good work that is important to older adults. And you've done you've come up with ideas that I think, yes, I want the older adults that I get to work with to have that kind of a community. So congratulations, and I'm excited to see where you're at today. Yeah, okay. How about that?
They have a small gift for board members.
But we need to give them a round of
I think there's a question in the audience.
How do you use a filter to desalinize your water? That question.
Let me think for a second. Okay, so I don't know if I already said this, but filter's made of a very fine mesh that traps the salt ions before they can travel through the water. So the water's pumped through our desalination tube, and the ions are trapped by the mesh, and the fresh water is pumped out of the desalination tube into the storage units. And then we export our salt.
Excellent. Sorry, I'm like, I used to be a Future City judge in Texas, and I am a former Future City coach, so I just had to know. Good job.
Well, we're very excited for all of you. Congratulations.
Thank you. Well done. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Great job and good luck.
Wait, no,
Well, you guys keep going. Yeah. Great job. Congratulations. Great job.
Good job.
Congratulations. Good luck. Good job. Thanks for all your work. Yes. Great job. Congratulations. Good luck. Congratulations. Good luck. Congratulations. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you for everything you do for our students. Thank you so much.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Awesome. Thank you. Congratulations. Okay. Thank you so much. That's good.
And thank you for the buttons. That was very, very thoughtful. Okay. Our next item is the report of the president of the board. First of all, I want to welcome everybody here this evening. Since our January 22nd regular meeting, the board has held 3 special meetings to complete the hiring process for our new superintendent. And I would just want to say congratulations and welcome again to Dr. Anthony Lewis, and we're looking forward to working with him. Board and staff are already working on the transition process in preparation for Dr. Lewis's July 1st start date. A couple things that I've been doing I wanted to share with the board and the community. On January 26th, in my capacity as president-elect designee of KASB, I attended a special meeting that was held of the Kansas State Board of Education, called in response to some concerns that were raised by a couple of state legislators regarding KSDE's handling of transportation funding under the school finance formula. I'm sure our board is aware of this, but I'm glad to report that the state board gave direction to our education commissioner to support KSD staff in their handling of that matter, and direction also to come back to the state board with information to enhance transparency around the funding formula and how it's implemented. I wanted to note that event sparked some further discussion about areas where the legislature has chosen not to follow state statutes in funding schools, and KASB just this last week put together some data showing that since 2009, our legislature has chosen not to appropriate approximately $867 million to which school districts were otherwise entitled by the terms of our state funding statutes. And so I think that's a really important thing to note, particularly in the context of ongoing discussions about funding equity and adequacy, and particularly because there was some discussion after that transportation issue came up about legislators saying that they thought they should claw back transportation funds that were allegedly incorrectly appropriated. That's a pretty big number. To put that in context, they choose not to fully fund their share of special ed every year. They choose not to fully fund the base state aid. And even though the statute says we're entitled to a certain amount, they don't appropriate the full amount. And so the issue is a lot more complicated than I think some of the talking points that came out around that might otherwise lead you to believe. On January 31st, I attended the Partnership for Early Success Early Childhood Symposium in Topeka. Symposium speakers were focused on the opportunity gap for children in early learning, especially for minority children, and how that opportunity gap impacts student outcomes throughout K-12. And they particularly focused on the question of how our policies as a district and policies as a community impact that gap, or how they support access to early childhood education for all. And I thought a couple of interesting examples they discussed had to do with things like food insecurity, discussing how our approach to identifying free and reduced lunch students early on in their school careers can have an impact on the long-term well-being of those students, and also tying things like immunizations and well child care and access to health insurance to student success in terms of chronic absenteeism being a driver of students who don't achieve to their full potential. And so it was a great discussion about how we can look more critically at our own policies and how we approach things to better support early learning. Also, as part of my service with KASB, I had the great opportunity last week to attend the National School Board Association Advocacy Institute in Washington, D.C. We spent 2 days in learning opportunities and then a full day visiting Capitol Hill and meeting with our congressional delegation. I was part of a team that met with Senator Moran and with Congresswoman Lynn Jenkins and Congressman Roger Marshall. I was able to share with them some stories about our school district as relates to the ongoing discussion about school choice, and also federal appropriations for things like the Carl Perkins Act and reauthorization, title programs, and special education funding. So I appreciated our representatives' willingness to listen to our concerns, and I'm hopeful that the group's advocacy with those representatives did make an impact with regard to their thinking on some of those issues. Last thing I wanted to share was that this evening the board completed Dr. Stubblefield's evaluation, and while I can't share the specifics, I would like to share the board's appreciation of the excellent work that Dr. Stubblefield has done for our district this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you want me to just go?
Yes. Next item up, report of the superintendent of schools.
Okay, thank you. Congratulations to our 5 presidential scholar candidates, Graham Edmonds, Quentin Harrington, Jackson Hoy, and William Campa, all of Lawrence High, and Janet M. Staffanoff of Free State High. I want to thank the Lead Center for partnering with us to bring Scott Turner Schofield, an acclaimed diversity educator on transgender issues and a transgender actor, to our district last week for discussions with staff and high school students. He also presented a public programs at the Lawrence Public Library and the Lead Center. Just a reminder to our elementary families that there's no school for grades K-5 on Friday due to recording and reporting of student progress and advancement of parent-teacher conferences next week. And our school board lunch is tomorrow at Woodlawn Elementary.
Thank you, Dr. Stubblefield. Okay, at this time we have an opportunity for patron commentary. We do have one patron commentary this evening, so I'll remind everyone of our audience participation requirements. The USD 497 Board of Education appreciates patrons taking time to talk to us about our policies and procedures. We set aside this time during our regular meetings to hear from the public. It's the time to share your opinions, but we ask that you avoid making comments of a personal nature about district employees or students, including the use of personal names. While you're not required to share your contact information, we ask that you do so in order for district staff or board members to follow up with any specific concerns that you may have. And we ask that you limit your comments to 5 minutes. Thank you very much. And our commenter this evening is Gary Schmidt.
Thank you. Last March, Justice Matters requested of District 497 that personnel from the school board join us to a visit to a Wichita school that had implemented restorative justice practices, and to be in discussion with Justice Matters and KIPCOR, the Kansas Institute of Peace and Conflict Resolution, about the role of these practices in Lawrence schools. Although unfortunately board members did not accompany us on that visit, the board later informed us that the district was setting up a pilot project. At the school board meeting on June 26th of 2017, Justice Matters requested that in the interest of transparency, the district keep the public informed of progress in the implementation of restorative practice programs in the schools. We also requested that the district and the school board meet regularly with Justice Matters and other community organizations that might be interested in such implementation. Further, we ask that individual and institutional perpetrators of racism in the schools be held accountable through the use of restorative justice practices. Then Board President Harmon said that conversations would continue and that administrators at Liberty Memorial Central Middle School had begun looking into the implementation of restorative justice practices at their school. He indicated that he expected reports on LMCMS efforts at future school board meetings. However, absent any such reports from the board on implementation this school year, Justice Matters reached out to Principal Jeff Harkin and requested a meeting. He graciously accepted our request, and in the latter part of January, we met with him, a school counselor, and Jose Cornejo and Dr. Besselo from the district were also at that meeting. Principal Harkin reported that 16 staff, including himself, had received training from KIPCOR and that a pilot program was indeed in progress. He was enthusiastic about the potential for the program and indicated that if funding was available, he intended to have additional staff trained and hoped to have a whole school program up and running for the school year 2019-2020. We're excited about these efforts, and we wish to be an ally to the district's transparency in educating the public regarding implementation of restorative practices at LMCMS. We have spoken with Principal Harkin about some potential ways that we, Justice Matters, might be able to assist the program at LMCMS. To reiterate our request from June of 2017, please be transparent by giving periodic updates to the community regarding implementation of restorative practices and improve accountability regarding racist behavior within the district. Our ultimate goal is to see restorative practices spread throughout the district to heal the harms of institutional racism. I thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. Okay, our next item is board commentary. GR?
So I have a couple things. About a week and a half ago, I got to attend my second facility planning committee meeting, so just wanted to report on that. We covered a couple things. So we talked about just the status of where the district was on the fundraising sponsorship policy and where that was, and that's making progress, and it's gonna come back.
We're shooting for either the second February meeting or the first March meeting, depending on what kind of feedback we get from the community on that one.
Yep. I had a really nice agenda that had notes, and then I lost it, and so I'm going back to the agenda that has no notes. So I apologize. So I'm looking at Shannon, who was there with me, who has a better memory than I do. We talked about the improvements to the athletic facility fields. That the fields that we have, they've kind of exceeded the life expectation when we put them in, but it's time to replace them. So we talked about the financing plan that we're going to use to replace them, and the different considerations that we have for the different neighborhoods around the schools, and the different considerations that we're taking to be good neighbors, and the different things that we're going to do for that. So that was a really, really interesting discussion. It was really informative. All the bond construction updates, everything's working and on track and on time and on schedule. And then the end of the meeting, we looked at enrollment projections across the district, and decided that the Boundary Advisory Committee needs to meet again to look at those numbers and decide if any decisions need to be made to make some adjustments. Make that decision and bring those recommendations back to the board. And they were going to try to meet in March.
I think we have tentatively identified March 12th for that meeting.
March. So that was the report from Facilities Committee. And then one last thing was last week we got to attend All Cities choir concert at the Lead Center with the combined middle school and high school choir, which is always a fantastic event. So that was fun. Even got to test my eyesight and picked out Jessica from across the Lead Center. So that was fun, as I send her a random text and say, "Are you at the Lead Center right now?" So that was fun.
All right, thank you. Kelly, did you have
So the Board Policy Advisory Committee met today, and I'm getting a phone call. And we looked at, as GR had mentioned, we again looked at the fundraising policy and are reviewing that and hope to make recommendations to the board, as Shannon has noted, and certainly looking at feedback from the site councils and the PTAs. We looked at the superintendent evaluation tool, which we use today, and we'll be streamlining that and getting it ready to present to Dr. Lewis as he is onboarded into our district. And we also looked at clarifying board committees, which ones are our community committees, which ones are board-appointed committees, those that we sit on. And Shannon, you had talked about maybe just making that clearer to the board, which committee is a board-appointed committee. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Sure. So right now, and this is more of an internal thing, but it does deal with how our policy applies to committees. So we have a board policy committee, or a board committee policy, but it's not real clear from the information that we provide to board members what committees are considered board committees and what appointments that we make that are things outside of our district that don't fall into that policy. So we talked about how can we clarify that and better define what is a standing board committee, and then there are some things in our policy that apply to those standing committees that we just need to be clear about the expectations. So we'll continue to work on that.
I think speaking toward transparency, one of the things we're looking at is Janice is looking at how to make the policy and gap reconfiguration available online and make it more user-friendly even for individuals at the board, at the building level. So that I think will be something that we can bring before the board eventually as well. Those are the highlights. Is there anything else that you would want to speak to?
Yeah, I think that covered it. All right. Anyone else? Jessica.
I would just say Shannon and I and Vanessa were working on a board manual that we have, with the search and everything kind of has taken a back seat, but just to kind of get it on your radar again, that we're amping that back up. Kelly's going to join us to go through sort of the preliminary draft of that, and then you will all see it, have a chance for feedback, but it's just going to basically be kind of a governing document for the board. We've never really had one. So just so you are aware, that's going to actually come back.
All right. Anything else? Okay, great. Thank you very much. All right, our next item is our consent agenda. Consent agenda items are those that are considered routine and are adopted by one motion unless any board member or the superintendent requests that an item be removed. The item or items removed are voted on separately. Nothing to remove.
We have
Great.
one retirement
Okay.
to announce, and that is Eileen Young, who has been a part of our district in food services for 19 years, so we thank you for your service. With that, I move that we accept the consent agenda.
Second.
All right. Dawn?
Jones?
Aye.
Kimball?
Aye.
Beeson?
Yes.
Yes.
Winter?
Yes.
Gordon Ross?
Yes.
Ingram?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to our regular business for the evening. We have a report this evening on our AVID program from Leah Wisdom, our Assistant Director of Equity and Student Support Services.
How do I wake it up?
I can grab some.
Good evening. Maybe it's coming. Here we go. All right. Good evening. Again, my name is Leah Wisdom, Assistant Director of Equity and Student Services, and I came with a gaggle of AVID ears out here, so I have some AVID elective teachers here and some students who you'll hear a little bit from mid-presentation. So with that, we'll get right into it. I wanted to start, I know that we have some new board members and some of you have heard this presentation before, so we are going to do a brief overview of the connections and what AVID is. We'll hear from our students and then I'll get into the data, which is some of it is newer to you. So as you know, you all have goals and expectations, and I really wanted to highlight the specific goals that are applicable to AVID, and then in the expectations piece, even more specifically, the request to use culturally relevant, rigorous, and research-based instructional strategies, curriculum materials, and assessments. I think that is really critical because it aligns to the AVID curriculum. Also, we have KISA, so it's another place for us to be thinking about how AVID supports those goals and those pieces. So evidence-based practices or research-based shows up again in KISA, as well as the 4 R's, relationships, relevance, responsive culture, and rigor. And while I'm just now really getting used to or looking into the rubrics, AVID certainly supports us in many of those areas. And then, of course, the results section. And CI3T, AVID is a place where we can be preventative and proactive in providing more access to content, especially rigorous content, for all of our students and specifically our AVID elective students who we target for that support. You've seen this before, many of you. The specific mission that comes from AVID Center is to close the achievement gap by preparing all students for college readiness and success in a global society. And this is where I like to just remind us, is every student that we have going to pursue higher education? Probably not. But do we have a responsibility to not give that opportunity to some, right? We have a responsibility to provide everybody with the option should that come up with whatever life path they choose. So when we think about the AVID school-wide piece, we have opportunity there. And then, of course, our AVID elective students are college-bound. That's why they're in that class. So what is AVID? For those of you who don't know, got these bullets here, but it is a school-wide college readiness system. So there's opportunity for strategies to be used school-wide. It's a structured approach to attack rigorous curriculum. So how can we give students the tools that they need to be successful in rigorous curriculum? There is a really direct support structure for students that are enrolled in the AVID elective, and there's lots of opportunity for professional development, and we'll get into that. Specifically, the AVID elective class, it accelerates students, it provides support for academic and social skills. There should be intensive support for students, a positive peer group, and you might hear some of our students speak to that, and then develops a sense of hope and personal achievement. And what's really cool about the AVID school-wide piece at the bottom sort of corner there is they've refocused. They went out and asked everybody in the nation that has AVID of what's most important to you, and what came up was instruction, systems, leadership, and culture, which is perfectly aligned. So it has lots of opportunity for a building and for a district to look at your system from those perspectives and think about how AVID can support your other initiatives. So again, the AVID elective student profile. This is a student who has academic potential, who is college bound, but oftentimes is in the academic middle. So they might have average to high test scores, their GPA. There's a rubric, and there's exceptions to all these, but college potential and a desire to go to college and determination. And sometimes our AVID students may meet one of these additional criteria, right? They might be the first to attend college in their family, or of a race that's historically underserved in our four-year universities. Could be low income, or there could be other special circumstances, and sometimes none of those apply.
Leah, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Can you maybe clarify for if this is more specific just to the high school, or if this applies both to the high school and the middle school programs?
This AVID elective student profile applies to both middle school and high school. Mm-hmm. Essentially, you're looking for students in the academic middle, and then if your group of students that are interested is large, you start to narrow it down utilizing additional criteria, because we want to allow the opportunity for students who might fall into those risk categories. Thank you for the question. So an AVID elective course is all these pieces, right? There's these WICOR strategies, writing, inquiry, collaboration, organization, reading. The students in high school, so that says high school only, are required to take at least one AP advanced or honors course, and also the courses that are offered at College and Career Center can meet that requirement as well. They do tons of enrichment. I'm sure each of these teachers would want to come up here and tell you about all of the really wonderful and great things that they do in their classroom around guest speakers, college visits. I think Liberty Memorial's headed to K-State tomorrow.
We are.
Yeah. Goal setting. And then what you're seeing in the background running on a loop, literally like a 15-second loop that I caught on my camera, is a tutorial, and that's that bottom piece. Students are sitting in a U shape, and they're going through a tutorial process with college tutors, but they're led by the students. And it's all about asking questions, so it's not traditional tutoring, like, oh, you don't know how to do that? Here's how you do that. Instead, it's, what could you do? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? So it's an inquiry-based approach to support students in getting to answers. So I just wanted you to see a little sliver of what it looks like.
For the AP requirement, is that one requirement in their high school career, or one?
At least one in their high school career, but most of them try and get them at least one a year.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so we want to hear from a few of our students, and we have three. First, we're going to hear from Akia Miles, and he is a student at Lawrence High. And then we have Jess Merritt from Free State and Genevieve Gilbert Cavender from Free State, who are both seniors. Yeah, you can come on up. All three of you can come up, in fact. And Akia, you can get us started.
Wow. Hello, my name's Akia Miles, and I am a junior at Lawrence High School, and I'm going to talk about my experiences I have been so far in the AVID program. So, I've only joined the AVID program for about 2 years. For the rest of my peers, they've been in there since 8th grade. But when I joined the program, I've learned a lot more than I thought I would actually learn. So, well, when I first went into the AVID program, I was scared because I didn't know what to expect of the program, because I've never done such a thing from my previous year as my freshman year. But as time went on, the fear of trying new things kind of went away, and I found new relationships with people that I thought I would never make before. And I would say AVID's kind of more of a family bonding thing, because we support each other trying to get to a certain goal that we all want to try to achieve. So within our tutorial lessons that she mentioned earlier, we kind of build on top of each other, hopefully trying to help each other for a test, or trying to answer a problem on homework that we're slightly confused on that we can't get enough from our teachers. So it's kind of more of a team building effort that I feel like we can, which I highly encourage 8th graders to do, because it gives you knowledge and skills that I'm still learning today, which I find really amazing how this program benefits me later on as my future going to college, or as a person in general. So I think it's a great program, and I would highly encourage anyone to join it. So, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so my name is Jess Merritt, and I am currently a senior at Free State, and I've been in the AVID program since freshman year. I wasn't, when I was in 8th grade, it actually wasn't part of the middle schools yet. It was still just a high school only thing. And, you know, I guess I got introduced the same way that everyone else did. They had the little meeting that you got specially invited to, and they talked to you about what the AVID program was, and there were some of the tutors there, and they gave you the little application and the requirements. And it seemed kind of daunting at first because, I was like, I don't know, 13, 14 years old. I had never like applied for a job. I'd never done an interview or had to write an essay for something more than a grade. So that process was a little bit intimidating at first, but I got used to it. I went through it. I think the parents had to do an interview too, and it seemed like a nice fit for me, considering I always had really high academic goals, and I had a lot of big dreams for myself, considering career-wise, but didn't necessarily know how to get there and was a little bit financially challenged. So flashing forward, like as I was in the AVID program, I kind of wanted to talk about how it's benefited me academically, specifically talking about the last most frequent years. I've taken a lot of advanced classes. I tend to take around 2 to maybe 3 a semester because I don't want to overload myself with too many at once, or my mom doesn't want me to overload myself with too many at once. And so I would alternate between which ones, but I also got to take these really, really cool classes like Principles of Biomedical Science at the College and Career Center, which I would highly recommend. It's a great class, and so a lot of the AVID values like the hands-on learning and the project-based learning and the collaboration really helped out, especially in that class, because the class was actually in like a lab, and we had to do a lot of lab work with partners and figuring things out for ourselves. It was very independent, so that really helped out. And then I took probably the hardest class I've ever taken, which was AP Chemistry, and it was something. But, I learned a lot, even though my grade might not have been the best in that class. I find that I actually retained a lot more knowledge, and I definitely don't think I would have done as okay as I did if it weren't for the tutorials and especially the college tutors that were in there. As of this year, I think, is the year that I've benefited the most from AVID because of their core values and the things that they kind of push on you with, yeah, you can do this later, but what if you get it done now? Yeah, you can get this credit later, but why not add it in right now? And so because of that, my schedule's been really open this semester. I'm taking reduced schedule, so I only go 1 through 5, and 2 of those classes are actual core classes. I'm taking AP Environmental Science and then Science Fiction. But then other than that, I'm doing 2 independent studies, which is a class that I had to go and design myself and write a curriculum and write a grading scale and propose something that wasn't traditionally offered at the school. So my first one that I'm doing is with a collaboration with 2 other students, and we're building a school garden at Free State because we have all these 2 areas that are completely unused, and we wanted to kind of incorporate that. And the second one is that I'm building a set of tableware, sort of, in my ceramics class for the Sunrise Project, which is where I have an internship. And that's another thing I wanted to touch on, was this internship that I've been able to get, which was because of a collaboration between AVID and my AP class that I have been taking. And AVID really gets you into sort of resources, and it gets you into, connections that you wouldn't be able to get in other places, like when they have the guest speakers come in or when you go and tour colleges. I didn't even know about the college that I wanted to go to until I went on a tour to University of Missouri, Kansas City, and now I'm accepted there into their environmental science program. And so because of AVID, they're always incorporating getting on hands-on experience before, don't procrastinate, get stuff done quickly. So now I have this internship with Project Sunrise where I get to go work sort of in the field, but also with community service. And it's been a really great experience, and that's not even talking about how, like you mentioned, the family atmosphere that's going on within, because you have the same teacher in the same class for all 4 years. I knew Genevieve in middle school, but we really bonded over the last 4 years having this class together. And it's been a truly beneficial experience, and I love being able to reach out to the younger kids and encourage them to do it like I did last week at Southwest Middle School. And it's been a great program, and I definitely don't think my high school career would have gone as well if I wasn't involved in it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So my name's Genevieve. I am from Free State, and I've been in AVID since freshman year. Life has been a struggle for me ever since I was really young because my mother was a single mother and she had 2 children, and supporting us was difficult, but she always made it positive somehow, and she always pushed me, but it was always hard for me to kind of look at the positive as I got older because things suck in middle school. Kids are kind of horrible sometimes, but whenever I was finally put into Avid, yes, like Akia said, it was kind of a scary new thing, but I definitely felt more of a family vibe than I had with my own family, honestly. Like Jessica said, we've become really good friends over a while, even though we met in 6th grade. Avid has definitely brought us closer. And I lately, in the last year or so, I'm not living with my parents anymore because of the difficulties. And so I have had to go on my own, and my Avid tutors, my teacher, Mr. Martin over there, who is pretty dope, has been helping me through everything. And I've just been really grateful lately for Avid and how they've been able to support me, even though I've been going through such a struggle. But yeah, thank you.
We all have a story, and I know all of our Avid students do, but thank you so much for being willing to come here and share a little bit of yours with the board so you can kind of get a sense. All right. So I want to move into some data after hearing from them, and I created this beautiful graphic to show you. This is actually data from the 2015 graduating class. So it's the first class we have that's been out for a couple years. And it over on the right, is that right? Left? Anyway, on the opportunity side, it kind of shows you the different opportunities that there are within the Avid elective, right? So we're looking at academic rigor, and then over here under results, 90% of that 2015 graduating class completed at least one course of rigor. For college readiness, 100% of that 2015 graduating class completed 4-year college entrance requirements. In terms of college acceptance, 100% applied and 100% were accepted. And college persistence, 75% of those students persisted into their 2nd year of college. So that's really, this is the first time we've been able to access kind of some persistence data, and that felt pretty good to see that. Now granted, the 2015 class was a little smaller, and you'll see in a minute the growth that we've had and some of the challenges that that brings. But definitely want to look at that. As a brief overview, the history of Avid here in Lawrence Public Schools. We started in 2012 at Lawrence High and Free State with just freshmen. I think Lawrence High had a few freshmen and sophomore. We trained a small team, and they just kind of went forth. I have circles that help here. In 2015, we expanded to Avid at middle school, and we added the elective class at 8th grade only. So they're still utilizing some of the strategies school-wide, but they have the Avid elective class just at 8th. And then in 2017 is when, and you've heard us talk about the CRT strand, culturally relevant teaching Avid strand. Many of our teachers were going to training and attending that and saying, wow, this is something we should offer in Lawrence. And so we do now. I do that facilitation, and we really tie it back to that foundational piece of Beyond Diversity. So CRT, we started that last year and are continuing that into this year. And then this year, we continue to implement. We certainly have grown. Every high school has 1 to 2 sections at every grade level. And at the middles, some have just 1 section, some have 2. So we've definitely grown. There has been conversation in the middle school scheduling committee around the possibility of having an Avid elective class at 7th grade. So it's possible that that might be coming forth as a recommendation, but there are a lot of considerations around that. But they certainly have had the discussion. It's something they want. It just doesn't fit. All right, so Avid enrollment. We started, if you look, spring 2013, we have 44 students. To now, we have 337 enrolled in the Avid elective. And if you look at that growth pattern, we've had steady growth, and you can kind of see the stabilization at the high schools because they've hit a cap. We're not going to keep adding Avid elective classes. It's not a class every student would be in. So we definitely want to hit a cap at some point, but there's still some steady growth at middles. In 2015 is when middle school was added, so you kind of see that jump in numbers, and that is when we also came back to you and said, yes, we can add middle school, but we'll need a budget increase. So we had that budget increase there as well. But if you look, we've grown quite a bit since then. So that's something for us to continue to consider as we're supporting. So I want to just go through some of the demographic data, and we've talked about this before. It has been an ongoing trend, so you can see our percentage of female students to male that are in Avid is significantly higher, and and our coordinators know that, they see it in their data, so we just kind of continue to look and monitor this data, shows up for them every year, and they look at it with their site teams. So something we're aware of. Okay, this is the percentage of AVID elective students that are enrolled at each grade level. So in 2017 at 8th grade, 12% of the 8th grade class was in the AVID elective. Does that make sense? So I just want to show this shift. Like in 2016, 10% of the 8th grade class was in the AVID elective, and then that same class moved right to 9th grade in 2017, and you see the number drops a little. And I just want to point out that some of that comes from students take AVID as an 8th grader and decide, not for me, I don't want to take AVID anymore. Because we do ask them to reapply when they move into high school so that they have a really good sense of what the high school AVID elective classes is requiring of them, although it's very similar. The other thing that happens is that it happened this year really for the first time, and I don't know if it did at Free State, but I know it did at Lawrence High. We couldn't accept everybody. We didn't have enough. They couldn't find another place for a third freshman class. For an extra freshman class. So that can sometimes be a reason for the drop. And then the other thing, if you look from 2016, 10th to 11th grade, this was an interesting shift, and I obviously can't tell you exactly what it is, but one thing that comes up and that we've been in discussion around, although I did hear our students talk about having classes at the College and Career Center, but sometimes that can be a barrier for students in AVID, that they either they can't take the class they want at College and Career Center because of when AVID is. And so Patrick Kelly, who's the director out there, we've had a lot of discussions about how do we make sure this is not a barrier. So we're just trying to blow the box up. What does it look like? Can we offer AVID out there? What can we do? So, or are those soft professional skills that they're teaching at College and Career Center, does that somehow, also mesh with AVID? So we just want to make sure that, and then I think the other thing that happens is schedules get tighter, and sometimes the AVID elective doesn't fit. So something important to look at and be aware of.
Yeah, actually, the only way I was able to take a College and Career or drop another class that's really important to you. It does take all of your elective hours.
She couldn't get sleep. I'm just kidding. So that's really important to know. Thank you for sharing that. And that speaks to why we need to be looking at this data and thinking about what the barriers are. All right, so this is the percentage of AVID elective students by race or ethnicity compared to all. So you can see them up there, and then all students versus AVID elective students. So in this data, what we're looking at is to make sure we don't have an underrepresentation of students, specifically non-white students, in the AVID elective. So you'll see, to some degree, disproportionality, like in Hispanic or Latino, we have 6% district-wide, 11% in the AVID elective. We just want to make sure that percentage isn't lower. We want it to be equal or higher. And in this case, with the exception of 1 year, 2013, Asian, all students versus AVID elective students, that was off. So we're constantly monitoring that, and if we see dips, we want to keep thinking about who it is that's showing up in that AVID elective class and make sure that we're serving our demographic. All right, so teacher training. There is lots of opportunities for teacher training. There's a summer institute. We go every summer. There's always one in Denver. So like this year, we're taking the activity bus and we are driving out there. I know people are thrilled that we're doing that. But to get as many people to go as we want to go, driving is the best option, and Denver is not too far. So we do go there. We take small teams from every building, and it's a wonderful opportunity for them to collaborate and plan. So that's that Summer Institute. The downfall is it's limited. We can't take everybody. Not everybody can go. I mean, if you're a coach or if you've got something going on in the summer, it's never an opportunity for you. We have some, parents who can't because of their children. So it can be limiting. I do an AVID site team retreat every year at the beginning of the year for the entire site team. So it's not for all staff. It's just for their site team, and we build their capacity and just sort of get set up for the year. There's AVID elective teacher trainings. We can do them up to 2 times a year, but we do not have the budget to do it that often. So we've done it. Haven't done it this year at all, but we have done it before once a year. There are opportunities for regional trainings. We try and offer AVID strands at our district professional development day, and those are open to all. The only 2 things that are counting towards this percentage are Summer Institute and regional training. So I just want to be clear on that. The percentage would be significantly higher if I was including all professional development, but for things that are sponsored by AVID, 19% of our teachers are trained, which is actually pretty high, and we feel pretty good about that. We want to keep increasing it, and again, we're spreading it out to more content teachers. It's not just secluded to our Avid elective teachers. So some of the challenges. Fidelity of implementation. So look at that growth pattern from 44 students to 300, wherever we were at right now, and then that also grows the number of teachers at each building who also are responsible for a content area. So it might be a science teacher that picks up one section of the Avid elective, so they also have their content responsibilities. So fidelity starts to look a little different as you grow, and so that is a challenge, and I'm going to speak to in the next slide some ways that I think that we can start to address it that will be helpful. Budget constraints, so specifically the high school FTE, I just want to make sure the board knows this because it's also speaks to the commitment that the high schools have. They get, and I might get this wrong, where's Kathy? If I get this wrong, you can speak up. She's like, I better listen hard. So the high school has their pocket of FTE money that they spread out, and for Avid, they dipped it out. They take it out of a fund that was kind of brought back to them when the alternative high school closed. But it's not really on top of, but they use that to pay for their one Avid elective teacher and one plan time because our coordinator gets an extra plan. So every Avid elective class that they've brought in after that is coming out of their FTE. That makes sense. So they're saying, oh, we'll use this science teacher for one section, and that might, whatever that means for them. But it shows a huge commitment on their part, but they definitely hit their max, right? So they can't really expand that much farther. Middle school is a little different, but they're certainly even more challenged because they don't have as many staff or as much FTE. So training of content teachers. So I mentioned there's lots of opportunity to train, but there's a lot of cost associated with that. So we're just kind of starting to think that through. And then the fidelity piece, just giving our Avid elective teachers and coordinators more opportunity for training as well.
So the training of content teachers, is that the implementation of the school, considered the implementation of the school?
Yes.
Wide?
Yes. So the way that they're implementing school-wide is by training more teachers on evidence-based strategies that they're nothing new, but Avid took them all together and said these are evidence-based, and they gave a common language to it. So the power is if your content teachers are using the same language around things like philosophical chairs and Socratic seminars and Cornell note-taking and organization and all those things, you start to provide a level of consistency for students who, it would be a struggle for me even right now to move from class to class to class to this personality to that personality to that personality. And so it allows for that consistency of language. And they offer training specific to the content. So it'd be like science Avid strategies, math Avid strategies, reading Avid strategies.
And that's for all students, not just Avid elect.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. Good question. Oh, the misunderstanding of Avid elective student profile is also a challenge. And it still happens even in our buildings where people think that the Avid elective student looks like this or looks like this. And so we just keep educating around that piece that I showed you, the Avid elective student profile, students in the academic middle, college potential, a drive and determination in those pieces. So we continue to combat that. And then the Avid school-wide piece, which is the question that you just asked, Melissa, but the intentional use of those evidence-based strategies, and then of course having access to the training and then putting them in place. So school-wide is more of a challenge, particularly as you get to larger buildings, staffs are larger, opportunities for PD are fewer. So lots of considerations, but we will not be deterred. So we keep pushing forward there. So some next steps, which is really about addressing those challenges, but consider the possibility and support of Avid at 7th grade. If that happens, and even without that, there's a possibility through our budget request form that Avid will request some more funds to support that in addition to what we have. Increased support for each site. For me, in my role as the Avid district director, that's sort of what Avid calls this role, I feel it's important to really beef up what I'm doing in each of these areas. So I want to own that piece when I think about the support for each site, doing more walkthroughs, providing feedback to teachers and coordinators, and empowering coordinators to support their Avid elective teachers as well. Continue training all staff with all certified staff with CRT, the culturally relevant teaching strand. So we've just finished a couple days last week. And we have another one coming up, which is a 2-day. I think I invite anyone to pop in and out if you ever want to. It's a pretty great strand. And that's it. What questions do you have for me?
Questions for Leah? I just, before we ask questions, I want to say thank you to the students who came this evening. Thank you for sharing your stories. It really helps us understand how this really impacts you, and it's very powerful. So thank you.
Absolutely.
I also, you were saying the misunderstanding of avid profiling. Well, a big thing for me going into it was kind of a rep for it, was that they thought that you were stupid if you, but you have to educate other students better because they use that to.
Thank you very much for that. And that is the miseducation that I'm talking about. And we continue to to try and put that out there. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Questions, Rick?
And then
Kelly.
Sorry.
No.
No. So it's a great program, and I realize that there might have been some of that misconception early on, but I hear from a lot of kids who think Avid is great, and I think partially because there are great students, and I think you guys represent that really well. So I'm curious though as to how you built it in terms of the reputation and the enrollment. I mean, you can create a program and say, well, here it is, and if you build it, they'll come. But I don't think that was the strategy. So I was kind of curious as to how you.
I assume you're talking about the positive growth.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, I think one of the great things about Avid Center itself, so soon you're going to see a motion to approve our Avid contract for next year. We pay a fee to each building, and with that comes a lot of support, and the Avid elective teachers out here can probably attest to the really quality training that you receive from Avid. It's beyond, I think, beyond comparison. It is energetic. It models for teachers. I mean, everything that you do in an Avid training is modeling for you what you can turn around and do. So I feel like credit goes there, and then it speaks for itself. The family bond and the environment that is created by students, it gives me goosebumps when I go into their classrooms and just see how tight and how close they are. So it just kind of does it on its own, I think. But let me go backwards. When we started out, we also had some really strong coordinators. We continue to have really strong coordinators who push, who are the advocates in their building, who have helped me try and think and develop like our retreat that we do at the beginning of the year. And they decide who's going to go to the Avid Summer Institute. Kel was just telling me, I think you were just telling me how important it is to have the right people there, because it's such a powerful opportunity. If you have the right people there, the planning that you can do. But honestly, it really just comes back to it's structured, but it allows enough autonomy for the teachers to be who they are in that curriculum and to take what they want, but also build the relationships that are personal and authentic for them. So it's all there, and that's what makes it powerful. And then you get these great kids, and they show up, and they do it, and it just kind of, that's how I think it's grown, and that's how it's become what it is. So I don't know if that answers your question. I'm kind of like, I love it, but.
No, I'm curious as to how if you look at the growth, you started with 40 kids and now you're at 300, and so clearly somebody is doing something right in terms of getting the word out.
If I could, let me respond to that really quickly. These Avid coordinators, which all three of them are that are here, work tirelessly for recruitment. They work after hours. They try and bribe people with pizza so teachers will stay back with them so they can interview students. I think you all were just at, where were you today? Liberty Memorial?
Central?
We were Central.
Yeah, Free State was at Central.
These kids, the students, the teachers, they're going out to middle schools. Yeah, they've been touring around. They tell the students, they have large assemblies. So there is a ton, that's a better way to answer that question. There's a ton of recruitment on their part to educate and to let students know what it is. We've gone out and talked to site councils. So definitely a lot of efforts on that part, and tireless efforts that they deserve a huge thank you for.
Yeah.
I mean, if it helps you at all, Liberty Memorial Central started out with pretty much 14 kids every year for 3 years. We doubled that to 30 this year, and we are tripling it to 45 next year and going to 2. And it's really because instead of trying to target 1 or 2 specific types of children, we just opened it up to everybody that even remotely could fit the requirement. And what we did was we said, we think that you are fantastic. And we are looking for the best and the brightest to come join us on this adventure called college prep. And let's just see what you're willing to do and see how we can help you get there. And we had family buy-in and parent buy-in. We have, and I know I'm not the only site team that does this. We have parents that come to the Family Advisory Council. We have parent night that have involved, parents being able to learn from all of the high school counselors 2 months before any of the other high schoolers got to learn about all of the stuff that they got. They had pizza and panel night. They have so many opportunities to be able to be amazing. All you have to do is tell them that you believe in it.
See what I mean? They're all just great. And that is absolutely the kind of stuff that's happening. So
I think so.
Okay.
I was actually going to.
we actually
go ahead.
And you know what? I should be asking if you're going to speak, come up to the microphone so that you're.
Yeah.
It's okay. But that way you're on the microphone. Everybody can hear that way. Thank you.
Okay, so a thing they were talking about was how adults and teachers and everyone helps the students kind of realize what AVID is. But I'm going to tell you right now, I've talked to a lot of little kids. I have brothers. It's not just the adults, it's also the students or the kids who are experiencing this and knowing that it'll benefit pretty much anybody. So then they'll go out and they'll talk to the younger kids saying, hey, it's not too late. You can go ahead and go to your counselor and see what you can do. And some of them are like, oh, I don't know. But then some of them who really do need that support will go and they will talk to their counselor. So anybody is helping, especially the students.
Thank you. Kelly, did you have a question?
I do have a question. I just also want to second what you said about the feedback from the students. It's very helpful to me. And one of the things I was interested in is that you talked about how you joined after, outside of the traditional path, that you joined later in the process at AVID. And I was wondering, I think there, in terms of talking about misperceptions, I think there's a perception from students, because I have kids that are about that age, misperception that you have to start at a particular time and you can't join later on. So I was actually interested to hear that that was your path, and I'm wondering if you've noticed that, or if it's just something that's around the kids that my kids have.
It does. As students get to be juniors and seniors, it becomes more challenging to join the AVID elective class there, particularly seniors, because they're moving away from that tutorial process that we saw. They're moving into what is your, we've shown you all this, we've sort of shown you the way, now create it as your own. So their whole senior year is about developing study groups and you can throw out the binder and do your own system of organization. So it would be hard to come in at that point. But students can start, even at semester, we've done that in some cases, brought students in. Once they're in, we don't let them out. I'm just kidding. But we do make it difficult to leave because sometimes, and I don't know how the students would agree with this, but what I find is some students, initially that first semester, they're like, whoa, you want me to do what? I mean, all these Cornell notes, and you want me to show up with the TRF 2 times a week, and they want to quit. And so the coordinators and the AVID elective teachers say, let's stick it out one more semester and give you the support that you need, and if it still doesn't work out for you, then. But yes, there's some places probably up until about junior year, would you agree with that? Okay, that they can still come in, and that's where it would be very individualized. So if a student came in and they'd been an AVID at another school, maybe as a junior or senior, but that is where it gets a little bit more challenging, even for the student, to try and step in there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Helpful context. Thank you. Other questions? Really appreciate.
I think,
Go ahead, Melissa.
I'm listening and I hear a lot of that struggle with students probably wanting to participate in AVID, but they're afraid that it's going to interfere with some other things that they're passionate about, electives. So how do you, I know there's 0 hours in some courses, but.
So obviously they're limited in the number of in the number of electives that they're offered as students in the high school. And one of the things that we say is AVID is an elective and you have to want to be here. So it does mean, in some cases, giving up. But what they do is try and avoid scheduling conflicts. So for example, seniors are usually somewhere in the middle of the day, so it doesn't interfere with if they have a reduced schedule, yes? Right. There's all kinds of things that they do to try and avoid potential conflicts with other things like music, or when they know, so they can put those grade levels in different places. So they definitely try to do that scheduling wise to avoid huge conflicts, but sometimes and we've had students have to leave AVID because they're giving it up for something that's more important to them. And they just couldn't make it work. And so it is sometimes that decision, but they work really hard to avoid the conflicts as much as possible.
I really appreciate hearing something that stood out in the comments that the students made, talking about AVID values. And I'm thinking back on my own experience. I can't think of a time where I ever could have articulated the values of the particular course of study that I was in around things like all of the skills that you're learning. So I think it's very, speaks very well of the job that our instructors are doing, that the students understand what the structure behind all of it and the why. So that's really great. Thank you very much.
Could I just make one more comment? I teach college, and I'm thinking it'd be great if you had a college level AVID.
Oh, they have AVID at the college level.
That's great then.
AU just doesn't have it.
Okay. But my point is that, the training, the perspective, the values that you get through that when you get to college is really going to help you out. Mm-hmm. And so I think, we focus on, I think a lot of the things, at the, within the district in terms of how we implement it and how kids do and et cetera, et cetera. But I think there's a lot of value beyond just, that in terms of going on. And it's not just college. It's all these values are going to be helpful in anything you do.
Sure. I think everything in the AVID curriculum and all of the requirements around taking an honors class or AP, everything that they have incorporated for the AVID elective class is built around the research that tells you students that have been able to stick out 4 years of college. Because there's a lot of starting 1 year and leaving. And the research supports that through and through, which is why they offer AVID at the higher education level. It's like a school within a school. And so colleges that do that try and retain those students that are more at risk to not last the full 4 years. So everything they're doing is meant to help them stick it out, right? Perseverance. So
that's great. Kelly?
The other thing that stood out is that you got accepted to UMKC, and congratulations. We didn't say that.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Yeah.
Congratulations. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay, that concludes our business for this evening. So one more motion.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you.